This is kind of a universal question for anybody who wants to answer it, but I think in any design practice, any business, when you start with a new client, there's always that painful phase of educating the client. And I think for each of you, it's probably a different story, and I wonder if there's any one of them that you'd like to share.
Are you looking for a particularly painful one? Or are you looking for like a win? Are you looking for
Either, just a good story that has a happy ending, hopefully. Either because the client left or they improved.
Anybody got anything? You got one?
I have a short one that someone outside Google shared with me that works on the material design team, which is our design language that governs all of our products. And she really explains her job as, it is my job every day to answer some of the same questions, but the root of what I'm telling them is explaining again and again why design matters. To keep your grace and your patience and explaining that and realizing that is actually, like, it's not this other thing that you do that gets in the way of you designing. It's actually part of your job. All of a sudden this light bulb went off in my head and said, like, okay, set that expectation that that's just part of this process. And this is internal at Google. These other clients that we have where there isn't like budget at stake and all these other things. We're all supposed to be on the same team. You still have to go through that practice of explaining why this process takes so long, why you can't just do it in a day or 24 hours, or that why design matters again and again being a broken record.
I've got one that's kind of a tangent answer to that too, which is something we haven't really perfected yet in any way, shape, or form, because we keep trying it and it sort of takes, but then there's always a little bit of a hesitation as well, which is basically that oftentimes clients come with a very firm set of notions in their mind around what they're expecting you to deliver, usually because they have to budget for something specific when they're allocating money toward a project. And if you get a sense at the beginning that that's not actually what they need, you have to find some way of broaching that subject soon, right? And so one of the things we've been trying lately is scoping our projects in buckets, right? Where it starts with, like, okay, we're going to commit to this strategic work in this chunk, and at that point, at the conclusion of that work, we're going to reassess scope and figure out, okay, do you actually need this, or do you need this, right? And clients are very, at least in our experience, hesitant to do that because they're like, I'm going to spend this money, what am I going to get out of it? Definitely. And so increasingly though, if we're able to connect those clients to other clients who've been through that process and trusted it and see it work, then we don't have to convince them, you know. So there's something to be said for educating your client about the way things should fall out, you know, without preconceived notions, hopefully.
I'll feedback on that one.
There's the project scope, especially for design, for web development, for social media, because it's not something tangible a lot of the time that people can hold in their hands or wear on their heads or whatever. They don't see how much you're working on the project, so they don't, you know, so they don't know that you're what goes into everything. And so it's really important to just keep educating them, but to really be very transparent with this is going to take 5 hours and show them the results. So if you don't want to talk to them every day, a Trello calendar or a Basecamp or something like that can really help too. So, yeah.
Rudy, since you still have the mic, I have a quick question. In your presentation, in front of you, behind you at Cliff Bar, there was a huge wall of all colored, a complex graphic. Is that something you created for the client? And what did it represent?
It's very hard to discern exactly what that was, I'm sure, from first viewing. But that meeting was basically like a storytelling meeting for the client to figure out what our storytelling priorities are going to be over the course of time, over the course of the next calendar year. Because one of the problems they had was that gaining access to different channels was a catfight all the time. People were like, I need to focus on this, I need to get full access to our social channels to put this out, put this out. There are no priorities. So what we did is we brought all these people who are usually fighting and weren't usually working together into a room for a day to get them to agree, basically via a dot voting exercise, on what the essence of our stories as a collective, as a company, should be, and then map it out over time. So we created the framework for that. It was a big thing that kind of went across this one big wall, and then we did these exercises with 25, 30 people, and they basically decided amongst themselves. And it was interesting because it looks like a mess, but what it actually showed is that there are hotspots of certain subjects that were really relevant to each of these individuals and to the collective, which was the Cliff Bar story, which then we could map out over time, and then it wouldn't be a fight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Emily, I have a quick question. I asked you before, and I think maybe it's a valid question to ask in front of everyone else. How is it that you can download the stickers? Us being of a certain generation, it didn't come, without having to ask.
They are available in Gboard. You can find it on iOS or on Android. They're also available in Android Messages, which comes default on some Android phones, and then they'll also download it from the Play Store and replace it with Samsung Messages or whatever can be downloaded. And you can find it in Allo, so 3 different apps.
Thank you for that. And I just wanted to ask Trish, coming from a production, I'm not letting them go with the mic, people. I've been quiet all day. No, I haven't. Okay, Trish, I just have a quick question for you. Coming from a production perspective, of all the complex, beautiful folds that you shared with us, are any of those truly machine executable?
Yeah, okay, so are any of them machine executable? Absolutely. So some of them that even seem like they're not can be. So for example, if everybody remembers the Ringling College one with the little pop, there was the pop-out accordion with the little pop boxes in the other direction. A lot of times with when it comes to production, it has an awful lot to do with quantity. So in a low quantity, those are going to be done by hand because it makes no sense to set up a machine. However, in a large quantity, those pop-out accordions, they use blowers that pop those boxes in the opposite direction. So anything, if there's a high enough quantity, many things can be machine folded, and you would be amazed at some of the high-end specialty crazy formats that are done on high-speed folder gluers at quantities of hundreds of thousands into the millions, and then how many things are done by hand, and we'll call it under 50,000. So it really has so much. Don't let kind of a creative format discourage you from doing something interesting and exploring. So much has changed in digital print, as well as in offset printing, where there are so many things that you used to just not be able to do that now you can do in quantities as low as 1. I mean, it's amazing. And then there are so many things that can be done in really high quantities that are pretty special. Just incredible things going on in the print industry. So ask these days. So much has changed. And a lot of times your printer can give you some really great techniques and strategies to help you get what you're looking for, within your budget. So.
I have a question that kind of piggyback on the second one. Is this closer? For your special pop-out dies, is there special directions that I would need to give to the printer? Just say pop out this way or that way, or?
So, yeah, good question. So if you're using a specialty format, you always want to do your best to provide some documentation, a physical mock-up, as well as some sort of instruction. You're going to want to communicate with your printer. You're going to want to see a hard proof. Do not approve a dimensional creative format on a soft proof. Just don't, because you will be disappointed in many cases. That's not actually so much a lot of the foundation of the work that I've done on Fold Factory is to document the formats, to create the die lines that help people kind of get where they're going faster, and to have kind of highly technical files that would normally be really hard to create. So, if you can help your printer get 90 to 95% there, they're still going to have to work on your file in most cases. But, to do as much as you can to give them visuals and the best file they can have from the start, and to work with them actually from the earliest point in the process as well, because a lot of times they can give you some information or might even give you the template ahead of time that's going to help make the entire process better, so you won't have to reverse engineer it later at the end process when time is tight. So, yeah.
Trish, I thought the photo pieces were phenomenal. I've never seen some of the pieces that snaked around, back up and then again and around and around. I take it that your clients have phenomenal budgets.
Well, actually, well, no, that's a great question. Actually, most of those, so people send me stuff from all over the world. I actually didn't produce the stuff that I shared. It gets sent to me, or I collect it, or I have kind of a network of industry people that send me stuff. So those are things that are coming around from all over the world. Yes, some of the budgets are big. Some of my favorite things, though, are what I call low-budget wonders. So creative tweaks to kind of classic formats. So there are a lot of great things that can be done on lower budgets. And some of those would surprise you, by the way, that seem very high budget are actually not. So it has so much, again, to do with quantity and substrate effects, things like that. So you can really modify the budget up and down the ladder there, depending on what you're trying to do. So I would definitely talk with a printer. You might be surprised at how many really, really cool things you can do on a budget. So.
Hi. Thank you for those of you who really talked a lot about bringing emotion into the brand strategy and visualization process. I've been a managing director of a couple of agencies, especially in the consumer packaged goods world, and it's really hard to find differentiation when there's so many YouTube products, and so we tap into using emotion all the time to try and find the white space to differentiate products. The challenge, I think, that happens quite frequently is when you're trying to work with consumers and gather insights and dig into strategy, a lot of clients don't have the budgets to pay for that work. And so I know some of you talked about giving more of your lifeblood to a project to get deeper into the things that maybe clients don't pay for, but so you can deliver the goods, but sometimes you just can't afford to give that away. Eric, I've actually used the Atlas of Emotions in a yoga project that worked really well. I'm curious if any of you have come upon any resources outside of maybe, primary consumer research that maybe, within secondary space or interesting uses of primary research that weren't as cost intensive, but didn't have the blandness of, say, a survey.
I think social is amazing for that. I mean, it's really, you can do a lot on a very small budget with social. Something that we do, we take 7 different images with 7 different headlines and 7 different, emotions connected to it, or whatever it might be. We sort of have, we call it throwing it into the blender, which is mixing and matching all these different things, the headlines, the imagery, the content, the copy, or different videos, sending them out there to the same audience and testing it against that to see how people react and why they react and what they react to. And when we do that, there's about 100 ads that you can create all at once in an ad set, send it out, and for honestly like $200 or $300, you can get so much information back just to see what people click on and what they don't, and it can begin to inform you about so much. So that's a really cost-effective way to do it, and that's part of that's a big part of our strategies is beginning to understand that for audience development. So that's one way I'd recommend.
Yeah, I was going to say, for especially in the CPG world, you're thinking about things like package design or point of purchase displays or anything like that that really gets, like, once they put it out there, like, you're stuck with it for a while. Testing taglines or photography or iconography or anything with social so that you can then walk into your client and say, statistically, this does a better job of grabbing somebody's attention. Or if you think about it like a banner ad, which is kind of like at the web, that's kind of the equivalent of the 48 inches of the shelf in a retail store or something like that. Or it's you can do testing super cost effective to do the 100%, and then you can with statistical certainty say, this is where you want to hang your hat on your packaging on the front, and then we can stick the rest of the stuff on the back, or for some other kind of thing that you're really stuck with that goes in print that you make a lot of them. Social specifically is a great way to test on a super small budget because you can get that variability, and you can also talk to the same market. So as a surveys you can get, Survey Monkey bought, what was the name of that organization that they bought where you could do pretty cool surveys with a national footprint? You guys know what I'm talking about? Anybody? There's a little company, they had people who volunteered to take surveys, and they'll say, yeah, sure, I'll take your survey, give me, $20 or something like that. So they have this great database of people who say, and they give all kinds of information about themselves, and in exchange you can field a survey, and you only pay for people who complete the survey. So again, for a small amount of money, you can get X number of completes and get a good statistical variability, but I still think social is way cheaper, way faster. You can get a lot more controls, a lot more customization, experiment faster, cycle time stuff faster, and then you'll really be able to know this is what we should put on the packaging or something else that really gets stuck in front.
And we've done that for several companies. Once they understand that when we do that, it works, it's a really exciting thing to see the client light up and get that. We've started doing not just for the advertising, the posts, but we'll begin to run ads in different colors for products that they haven't created yet in order to see what color they should run and start to get, should the wristband be purple or should it be black or should it be green? And so that's a lot of what we do. Yeah.
Okay, so my question is less technical and a little bit more emotional, and I open it up to all of you. I've only been doing graphic design for 6 years now, which is very young in the scale of most careers, but I'm finding that creatives around me that I went to school with are dropping flies and transitioning to other careers. And I myself have been faced with this internal struggle of, do I love what I do? Do I hate what I do? And I don't know, I'm kind of falling out of love with my job. And I don't want to, because I think design is great, and I think it's an excellent tool. So I was wondering if you guys had any recommendations as to kind of encourage that element that I initially loved.
What do you do more specifically?
I actually initially started with digital marketing, and then I went on a random tangent for casino advertising, which was very soul-sucking. And now I work for a university print shop within the CSU system. So I'm bouncing around to different kinds of design. I don't know that I've necessarily found my niche, and that might be part of the problem.
So I'll take that one because I bounce all the time. I didn't follow a straight path. I started in print, I went to digital, I did a lot of UI work, and then as I got more senior, I ended up doing a lot of strategy work. I think that what happens with designers and what's happening with you right now is you're collecting experiences. And those experiences will help you hone whether or not you want to continue as a certain kind of designer or if you want to expand into something more multifaceted. It used to be that multifaceted designers were highly prized. And then things got super specific. And now, guess what? We're bouncing back to multifaceted designers. So this is actually a remarkable time for you, and it's amazing that at 6 years you've already collected 3 different types of experiences. And I encourage you to do more of that, and I wish that all of us, myself included, keeps doing that, because I think that then you'll be able to figure out what kind of designer, or what kinds, plural, of designer you really are. Thank you.
I'd say draw more, too. That's always good. Like to get away from the digital and get to the analog for a little bit, and then come back. Sometimes it's kind of overwhelming.
I actually tell these people in our office all the time, if you're not learning, quit. If you're not in a job where you're learning and growing, go someplace else where you will, because we're all way too early in our careers. You've got to be learning and growing, and if you're in a work environment that doesn't support that, it's not a good work environment. Otherwise, you're spending your life earning a living. You're just on, the merry-go-round, and that's a nightmare, and that is totally soul-sucking. I think also, and I think a lot of us up here are agency side. There you go. But I think it's also a little bit different because I know the people that I know when they go what I'll call client side, and that's a little bit more focused and there's more repetition. I think one of the advantages of agency side, I would love for somebody to contradict me or say something different, is there's a lot more variability. It's a little bit more like, but there's also like a lot more diversity of different types of, clients. Like you can be working on weird stuff with different challenges and different audiences, and that helps break it up a little bit. If somebody want to, yes, yeah.
Personally, I was able to break out and work on different work by doing pro bono work. So for organizations that couldn't afford to hire a designer, or startup, whatever the situation was, and I am not at all about working for spec. Never have done it, never will. But pro bono work is a real way to feed your creative juices and try something different.
This is a hot subject, I guess.
That's a really good question. I started out as an acting, I went to school for acting and directing. And now I do analytics and data-driven social media advertising. But it's all about, there's something that's the same about all these things, which is when I went to school for acting and directing, it was all about the content and what am I getting the audience to see and the lighting and the actors and all of that. Flash forward through everything that I did. Now, audience development is like my huge love, and it's exactly the same thing. It's just a different way to experience it. So I would take a look at your experiences and see what's been similar across the whole path that you really love, and see if you can go after that.
You probably say this with a little more edge, so I'm just embrace you for it. I think you have to do what you love. Life is too short. You get hit by a bus tomorrow, and you don't be twirling your life away doing something you don't love. Okay, and this is the radical part I want to say. I know it's easier for me to say, but I'm going to say it anyways, which is this: is that for so long as a creative person, I've always looked to serve a master as a client and an agency, somebody to tell me what to do. And I have some incredibly wonderful, generous clients. Truly, but doing client work sucks compared to doing work for yourself. And I think we live in this space and this time where the tools and the technologies exist, that you have these platforms which are totally free, that you can build a community and audience around what it is that you love. Because if ever they're like looking to belong, to join a tribe, why not join your tribe and build something up of that? And because even if you get paid 80%, 70% of that, what you're getting paid now, you will love your life 1,000% more. And I can't wish for any other gift for all of you than to do the thing that you love around a community that supports you. And we're seeing models of this happen all over the place. So this is where, like Game of Thrones reference, kill the masters. Kill the masters. That's it.
That was super awesome right up until you said kill the master. I loved it right up until there. I was like, yes!
Okay, we have one more question, and then, go ahead.
Right, well.
Kelly wanted to add one thing.
Sorry, Kelly.
No, it's okay. I just want to synthesize something that Jessica said and Chris said, because oftentimes there's this duality where it's like client or anti-client, and one indicates like, oh, a personal passion is driving it or not. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the case, because when you're a designer, you are a powerful force. And so, if you want to do the artwork for your friend's band, you can make them look better than the record label that has $100,000 to spend on it. I mean, that's real power. And so, like when I do work for clients, I have a client called Russ and Daughters in New York. I'm like, if I'm doing work with a client, I am serving them as a master to some extent, but it's like, we're working together and defending an idea of New York that's going extinct, and like, that makes me feel like, oh, this is really important, And so I think you need to listen to your emotion and your intuition and be like, oh, I'm really excited about this. And you might not even know why. You might just be drawn to it. But I don't think that it's less empowering to do client work necessarily. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I would agree with that also. And just to emphatically agree with this, to put a little more on the pro bono part, that the best way to get paid to do something is to have already done it. Right? Like no one's gonna be, you can't like sit, I'm not saying that you're doing this, but you can't sit around and be like, oh, I wish I was doing posters or whatever, but no one will hire me and do it because I don't have anything in my portfolio. You gotta just go make the posters, right? And so again, the best way to get paid to do something is to have already done it, right? And so if you go out and do it, I don't know any other way to get into a new kind of field than to do the work. And then the money comes eventually.
That's pretty good. Think of like the advice you just got. I mean, the wealth of experience that you just garnered, I mean, that's worth the price of admission right there. Go ahead.
Well, first, thank you for that. That was awesome. And now my question is a little bit related with it. You are an amazing, panel there, very different, but there's one thing that I think it's a common denominator for all of you guys, and you, at some point, do creative stuff. How do you guys keep that creative going? Where do you find inspiration? Is there a secret formula how to, find innovation, find inspiration to keep creating?
Well, I just wanted you to mention you have to keep the answers to a minimum just because we're running out of time. So please do, continue.
It's actually funny you should ask that, just because I did a Creative Mornings, the 7 ways to galvanize curiosity. It's all about like energizing your creativity, and the ones that I can remember on top of my head right now are, like, at least for me, is 1, put yourself around people that think totally differently or create totally differently than you. Be around them as often as you can. Anything that is interesting or weird, put it in your environment. Put it in your environment. You see something, like we got so many things in that other room, even if it's just a visualization of something, tape it to the wall, put it in the bathroom, put it in your environment. Take naps. You get stressed out about something or you don't know how the solution, take a nap. Lay down. I love turning my phone on silent and taking off the notifications on the computer and actually devoting myself to an hour of just play. An hour. You can take that time. Like, think about how much do we watch TV? I watch way too much TV. Like, I don't even want to know what that statistic is, how much TV I watch. But I'm just serious. Like, take an hour. It doesn't have to be every day. You can do it once a week or once a month. It'll be good for you. But yeah, I can't remember anything else. That's good.
So once a year I do a thing called the Yellow Pad Weekend, where I go somewhere for 2 days or 3 days without my wife, without anybody at all. It's just me, and I'll check into a hotel in a place I've never been before, or just kind of, it doesn't have to be expensive. I went to Auburn, which is 45 or 2 hours away from here, in the middle of nowhere, and nothing's really even there, but it was great. And I came up with like my entire plan for the next year. And so yeah, it's like there's that simplicity, or I find like when I went to Hawaii, or just travel, or going somewhere, putting yourself in a different situation and getting out of your head, that's where the creativity starts to flow. Suddenly I have all these projects when I get back from a vacation that I want to do. I'm like, oh, but I want to try this thing and that and that. And then as time goes on, they start to fade because it's work and the daily life. But you get out of that routine, that can definitely start to spark some creativity.
My advice would be to find something worth fighting for. And what fuels me every single day, because I know the mission, and the mission is very clear. And it's a fundamental belief of ours, is that like healthcare, education, it should be a right and not a privilege, that everybody in the civilized world should have access to free or nearly free affordable education, because this whole idea about going to a private art school to get an education for a job that doesn't exist, that you'll never be able to pay off, that idea bothers me. It really bothers me. So what we're really trying to do is not just to teach a class and make some money. We're trying to see if we can utilize the tools that we have to totally break the system. First kill the masters and then break the system. So there's a lot of anarchy, there's a lot of angst inside of me. But I gotta tell you something though, because I used to get tired a lot. I'm a little older now, it's like I can't grind the way I used to. But when I found a mission, something I can believe in and can fight for, man, you can't keep me off of what it is that I'm doing. And I'm thinking all the time. And it's the most exhilarating legal high that I know that you can get.
You know you're in San Francisco. That's that.
Something that really worked for me in charging my personal creativity was acknowledging when I needed to take a break, to give myself permission to be a moron, and then sparking my own creative hobbies. And for a long time, I thought I couldn't have a creative hobby because I was a creative, and I needed all my creative to go towards making money and not for my personal enjoyment. And I found that sparking my creative hobbies just fueled my professional creativity. And it was a circle of life.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you. Go ahead. Come on, I can't
Hey, so I was just going to mention a couple of things. When it comes to, I heard the take naps, also take long showers. Shower is, at least for me, a place where I zone out. And, suddenly my wife is like, why are you thinking so long? And I'm just thinking about things and, coming up with ideas that I never imagined. And another thing that I would say is like, not being from the United States myself, but coming here and being here for like over 10 years. Something really, really interesting is the different cultural baggage that we all have. And, when I first came to New York, for example, the person that hired me, he was Russian, and he's Russian. And it's interesting to talk about, things that have influenced what we do, like a cartoon that you used to watch when you were a kid, and how different that was from, someone from the US and someone from Russia, right? Your upbringing and, all those references, cultural references are totally different. So I guess something that works for me as well is asking really about the things that you assume as normal because of your background, but really realizing that everybody has totally different ways to get to some ideas, and that really manifests in how they do their work. And something that I would say more is that it's interesting that part of the digital culture of design forces, or we tend to really look at ourselves and as a digital designer, what someone else is doing on Dribble, what someone else is doing on Pinterest, we go to these sources of information that really just keep feeding themselves with the same thing over and over. So I would encourage you to look at, almost like fine arts, right? Coming back to before there was computers involved in graphic design, what was the inspiration then? I found that really powerful.
Thank you.